Welcome back to Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. This is Life Coach Myrna Young, and you are listening to 5-Minute Fridays with Coach Myrna. Today, I want to talk on the topic casual sex. And I've gotten this inspiration from an episode that I watched on the Fresh and Fit podcast. You see, my son introduced me to this podcast, and they have, it seems, the market for the men. You know, there's a podcast for men. I'm telling men how to handle women and these type of things. So since this is the #1 self-improvement podcast in the world, I thought that I should get into the conversation and share my wisdom and tell you ladies about casual sex, what it does for you, because the men are talking. All right. So I want to get into the conversation. So, and, I am not a millennial, I'm in my 60s. So I've come around I've come from the space of no sex before marriage. I've come from, the Bible that says fornication is bad. And my grandmother would tell me, hey, if you give away the cow, then there's no reason to purchase the milk. And what that means is that if you practice casual sex and you give away your milk, your cookie, right, according to Steve Harvey, then there's no reason for the man to marry you. So, hey, this is what this conversation is about today. I hope that I will give you some nuggets or bring some things to your awareness, because I think that you've gotten the wrong message somewhere. Now, like I said, the Fresh and Fit podcast have the men's market. And I was introduced to it by my son. I'd never heard of them before. So he turned me onto it. And the first episode that I looked at was they were talking about a high value man and a high value woman. And as soon as I heard the term high value man, high value woman, I know that they were picking up where Kevin Samuels left off. Because as far as I know, he's the only one that started that conversation. And sure enough, they were talking to a 39-year-old woman that thinks that she deserved a high value man. And what they're saying is no high value man wants a 40-year-old. So, hey, that's what they're saying. That's not what I'm saying. I got married at 45 to a high value man. So, hey, don't let people put labels on you. But that's not what I want to get into. So I thought that I should make an episode and tell you what these men are calling a high value man and what they're calling a high value woman, and how you can get one of these high value men if you want it. So I was searching through their episodes to find this particular one because I needed to make some notes. And then I came across a tribute to Kevin Samuels. Apparently, this is weeks after Kevin Samuels died, and they wanted to make a tribute to him because they're saying he was a good man, and people are laughing about his death and saying, ha, ha, ha. And, they're actually pretty upset about it. So they had all these men call in, right? So one of the men that called in, started talking about this encounter that he had with a woman, right? And, you women have had so many people tell you about this stuff. You are seeing the responses from the men. There are movies like Think Like a Man that taught you how a man thinks, right? And about casual sex, Steve Harvey, wrote the book, and, he had the movie, and he was telling women that you got to think like a man, right? If you want to get ahead, you got to get into their head, right? So on the Fresh and Fit podcast, they have these women there, and they ask them these questions. And one of the questions they ask them is about their body count. So the body count is how many men that you've slept with. And I'm not understanding how we got here. How we got from you needed to be a virgin at marriage, or at least you need to wait for the man to propose, or at least you need to call you your girlfriend. So talking about your body count, right? And I believe that someone gave these women the false narrative that sex is a way to a man's heart, right? My grandmother also told me that the stomach was the way to a man's heart. I don't even know because I'm not a man, right? But at least that one makes sense, right? Because if you know how to cook a good meal and keep a good house, right, then at least you'll probably get someone to marry you because everybody needs that, right? Everybody needs a home, right? So the new generation, though, doesn't even know how to cook, right? And I will tell you that every woman should be able to cook. And I'm not talking, I heard when somebody talk about, again, I was listening to the show and someone was knocking, can you cook a meal? Not an air fryer meal, which is something you put in the air fryer, you press a button. So they're even knocking an air fryer meal. But to me, that's a step in the right direction, right? You know, when I got married very early and I didn't know how to cook properly because, you know, my grandmother always did the cooking and she taught me how to bake and to clean a house, but she didn't teach me to cook. So I would call my mom up on the phone and ask her how to cook stuff. And I will tell you, my daughter has never once called me and asked me how to cook because she pulls up a recipe. So there's absolutely no excuse for people wanting to learning to cook. There's cooking shows, there's YouTube, there's Google, right? So if you don't know how to cook, shame on you. But anyway, so I also talked to my brother when I heard this conversation. I wanted to know, what does a high value man look for in a woman? And since my brother's a high value man, I thought I'll get his take on it before, you know, I wanted to do interviews with these high value men before I brought to you the information. And, you know, I said to him, you know, what about this body count situation with these women now that are going around? So he says, I wouldn't want to know. I don't want to know how many men a woman has slept with because I don't want her to be comparing me with others. And I says, well, all right, let's say that she had 30 men. How would you feel? Oh my God, he almost had a conviction. 30? He said, oh my God, it's like a roulette wheel. A roulette wheel has 32. Oh my God, I'm going to be going there covered up from my head to my toe. Ladies, that's how men think, right? That's how men think. You know, nobody wants to go where everyone else has been, right? And they're thinking that you're going to be carrying all kinds of disease and all kinds of stuff. So casual sex does nothing for you. Well, let's get back to the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you guys. Back to the Fresh and Fit podcast. Like I said, I was trying to find an episode on the high value man, and I came across an episode that was a tribute to Kevin Samuels. It was a call-in show, and all these guys called in, and they were talking how Kevin Samuels is so great, and Fresh and Fit was saying how Kevin Samuels is for the men, and the people that are laughing at him, and how he helped women, and all that. Now, I don't know if he helped women because they were pretty disrespectful to women as far as I know. I mean, several different times I wanted to turn it off, right? But I listened. And then came this guy that called in. And his take was, women are terrible, women are the B word, and the worse you treat them, the more they come running. And he tells this interesting story. Says that he was in a restaurant. I didn't actually catch if he was famous or something, but he said he was in a restaurant and some girl kept looking at him and he totally ignored her because he just felt that she was trash or something. And this girl kept looking at him. And when he left the restaurant and walked to his car, she walked up to him and says, you want my number? And he says, no. She didn't back down. She said that she DM'd him on Instagram and they started talking, which led me to think that maybe he was semi-famous or something. That's why she wanted to be with him. So they started talking on Instagram by messages. And he says a couple of weeks later, she asked him, do you want to come over? And he said, sure, because what is he thinking? Hey, she's going to give it to me and I'm going to take it, right? So he's over there. And a few minutes later, she is giving him oral sex, and then he's like smashing it. His words, not mine, ladies. He's like smashing it. And he's on the radio or the podcast, right? That's reaching millions of people. And he's talking about this girl, like she's a piece of garbage, right? And he says, well, I left there and I didn't even call her again. And she kept blowing up my phone. And hey, dudes, the worse you treat a woman is the more she's going to come after you. And I've heard this before. I was even watching the documentary with Whitney Houston where there's a line in there where she says she like bad boys. And the girl saying, hey, Bobby Brown is a hoe, right? She said, oh, I like bad boys. You know what? When you love bad boys, that's what you're going to end up with, right? Because they're going to break your heart and they're going to treat you like crap. You need to find a man that treats you like a queen, right? And you don't need to be giving your stuff away because it doesn't help you. So I want to dissect all the things that this girl did wrong. But I want to point out that, ladies, men are hunters. Let them hunt. Do not throw yourself at a man. It has the same effect as him finding a dead dog at his door. A guy told me that once, and I've never forgotten it. Picture it, right? A stinking dead dog at his door. That's what happens when you throw yourself at a man. If he doesn't want you and you're throwing yourself at him, that's going to be his response, right? So don't do it, right? In the olden days, women played hard to get, right? Even if they want a guy, they played hard to get, right? And this allowed the man to go fishing, right? Reeling in his catch, right? He would court you and he would send you flowers and would buy you presents and he would do all these things, wine and dine you, right? Yes, that's how you courted a woman before, right? So this guy did none of that. He showed no interest. And this woman kept throwing herself at him. And he did have the experience like a dead dog because he was not interested. He just wanted some free, casual sex because if you give it to a man, he's going to take it, right? Secondly, why would you invite a man to your house for casual sex and he hasn't even invited you out on a date? I'm trying to get into her head. Did she think she had some skills and that was the way to his heart? Because again, that's what the new generation thinks, right? But ladies, according to Andre Peretti, who is a relationship coach and he's been on the show several different times, he says that the moment a man has sex with a woman, his emotional connection to her falls. So it doesn't get you anywhere, right? If you want to build an emotional connection, if you want to build a friendship, if you want to be his girlfriend, that's not the way to do it, right? But I don't know about all that because I'm not a man, right? But I do know that if your end game is marriage, I was taught that no man wants a hoe, right? He's not going to marry you if you're a hoe, right? And I'm assuming that's what you want because most of us want that. If you don't want that, then this conversation is not for you. I'm talking to the ones that want to be married, that want to be engaged, that want to maybe live with a guy, take the relationship to the next level, right? So, ladies, if you haven't watched the movie Think Like a Man, you need to go watch it because it has a lot of nuggets in there that will lend to this conversation. A couple of the ones I want to point out here is that Steve Harvey laid out some of the fundamentals, like have the man at least call you his girlfriend before you take the cookie out of the cookie jar. That's what he called it, right? So I'm going to go on with that, right? Because it is your honey pot. It is your cookie jar. It's your bargaining chip, right? It still works that way. So if you give it away, then it has no value. So if we're not going to go and wait until marriage for having sex, then at least the minimum, the man should be your boyfriend. He could be your girlfriend, right? He needs to call you that. He needs to ask you, would you be, he needs to be, committed in some way to you, right? And in the meantime, then he also talked about letting him wait for 90 days. 90 days. That seems like an eternity to people that practice casual sex. But yeah, he said 90 days. Because if a man is willing to wait 90 days to have sex with you, then he really cares about you. And in the meantime, let him work for it. Let him wine and dine you and buy you presents and show you that he cares, even if he's pretending. He's got to work for it, right? Let him work, but you're a cookie. Casual sex is giving your milk away before they bite a cow. And if you continue to do that, you will end up old and alone. And if that's not your end game, then you need to change your behavior. I hope this helps someone. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind, the podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, would love for you to subscribe. If you're listening to this on iTunes, I would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. We have 5-Minute Fridays every Friday with Coach Myrna. And I hope to bring you information like this on a weekly basis. Until next time, namaste.